Hello everyone, my name is Jeff Shockling. I'm in the training department here in Graco, Ohio. And in this quick little video, we're going to talk about the PRX unit. What we're going to do is we're actually going to go through talk about the hardware such as the controller, the cables, and also the unit itself. But before we begin, what we're going to do is we're going to show you a quick little animation. I want to show you how it works internally here. Now that you saw the animation, what we're going to do is we're going to go ahead and dive right into it and talk about some of the hardware. So here we have the controller. Now there is a video out there that's going to go through all the screens here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to actually pick it up, and then on the back side right here you'll see all these connections here. Here in a little bit we'll get a little bit closer view of it. But the reason we're going to stay back is you're going to get a variety of different cables here. Now each one of these cables will actually have a purpose, and they'll be labeled, such as this one here, servo encoder, remote I/O, pressure transducer, and so forth. And then on the back of the controller, these labels will have a designated connection right here for each independent cable. So now what we're going to do is we're going to zoom in just a little bit closer here so you can get a closer look here. So here we have a close-up of the back of a controller. As you can see, everything's labeled here. We have the remote I/O, start signal, Ethernet, sensor valve, pressure sensor B, pressure sensor A, servo motor, and servo encoder. These are all caps here. So now if I want to, I can actually undo the covering. Now on all the cables that you saw earlier, there will be a label. So in this case, this one is my servo encoder. Now this will actually go to the drive itself. So I want the other end, and you'll actually notice there'll be a red dot in this case, and you just line up the red dot here and then press it in. Now in order to remove that connection, just pull back on the collar here and then pull out. Okay, so then the last thing on the back here, this is where your incoming power is going to come into, and then this will be your on and off. So from here, what we're going to do is we're going to go and take a little bit closer look at the unit itself. Okay, so in this video here, we're going to start out with a cartridge feed system. Now, with the cartridge feed system, we can have a couple different cartridge sizes. As you can see, this unit here is a direct mount, which means the MD2 valve is directly mounted to the unit here. We can also have an option where we can actually have a remote mount. Essentially what that is where a hose is going to go out to the MD2 valve. Later on in this video, I'll show you where we actually have a direct feed supply system. It's actually out in our lab, and it's mounted to a Unizac. So what we're going to do is we're actually going to break this down, and we're going to start out with the cartridge system right here. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to zoom in a little bit so you can get a little bit closer look right here. Okay, so we're going to take a look at the unit just a little bit closer here. So we're actually going to start out with the feed system. Now remember, this is a cartridge feed, so there will be a little bit slight differences between a cartridge feed and a direct feed. So with the cartridge feed here, we will have two air lines going to the system. This will actually be for the air to lift up the plunger inside and then a downforce. Here we do have needles, so we can actually adjust the speed here. On the side here we have our level sensor here. Now on the inside here, now I do have, there's no air in the system, so I'm going to slowly take this apart. So I'm just going to unthread this, and then this piece will thread out. So this kind of gives you an idea what it looks like on the inside here. So I'm going to set this off to the side. So now you see we have a standard plunger here, which is going to press down on the plunger that's on the inside of the cartridge. Now if you notice, the cartridges themselves are actually on a slide. Remember, this whole mechanism is actually going to go up and down depending upon if it's dispensing or reloading. So from here, the material is going to go down into through this valve here. So there is a couple sensors here. So this valve will open when the valve reloads, and then when the unit gets reloaded, it's going to turn to go to the off position. So this way, when it dispenses material, it's going to force it out through the MD2 valve. So if you take a look here, the slide mechanism, a little bit closer look. Remember, this whole mechanism is going to slide up and down. Also, while we're here, if you notice, we have a couple electrical connections. Remember, on our cables, this is where they'll connect up to a couple of them here. And then right here, we actually have our pressure transducer connection and an air fitting for the unit. And then here in the center is for our I/O. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn the unit to its side. And then what we're going to do is take a little bit closer look to the wires here. So here on the side of the unit, we're actually going to have 3 electrical connections here. One of these is for my sensor for the cartridge feed, and the other 2 are for my valve system here. Now these will only be used when we're using a cartridge feed. Then we have 3 air lines right here. One will be for the plunger downforce. The other one will be for the up force for the plunger. And then the last one here will be actually for the dispense valve. So if I switch it over to the other side, we notice we actually have the exact same thing right here. So what I'm going to do is we're going to continue on down the unit right here. So from here, we have the pressure transducer for my material. So we have one right here, and then we'll have one on the other side, and then continue on down to the MD2 valve. So if you look at the flow material is going to come through the valve, through these fittings, in through the shaft, down through the metering tube, and then out through our MD2 valve. So while we have the valve in this position, if you notice, we have some fittings down here and then some fittings up here. I just want to bring to your attention that these fittings are actually O-ring face fittings. So if you are ever going to replace them, they are a special O-ring face. They're not your typical MPT thread. The reason is we want to make sure there's no dead spots, especially with some materials where we can actually separate the liquid from the material itself. Okay, so what I'm going to do is I'm going to turn it back. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and remove the control box here, or the cover, so you can actually see what's on the inside here. So with the cover off here, you can see it's very busy on the inside here. So this is where we're just pretty much terminating all of our wiring. And then also we have all of our solenoids, whether it's for the MD2 valve or for the refill valves. So from here, I'm going to put the cover back on. And then now we're going to take a look at the direct feed unit out in the lab. So here we have the direct feed PRX unit. Once again, this can be a direct mounted MD2 valve, or it can be a remote mount. Really the big difference on this is going to be at the top here. So with a direct feed system, we're actually going to be using a 1K valve. So this valve will actually open when we go to reload and then close when we dispense. A couple other things with this here is, if you notice, once again, we do have a slide mechanism here. So this whole assembly is going to go up and down. Now, since we don't have the cartridge feed system, we're not going to be using these 3 sensors right here, because remember, this is for my low-level sensor for the cartridge, and the other 2 are for my actuating valve. These 2 air lines here will not be used, because once again, those are for my cartridge up and down, but we will be utilizing these 2 for the valve. So as you can see in the background over there in the back corner there, we actually have a little feed system that we're actually directly feeding right to the valve itself. So really there's not much difference between the direct feed and the cartridge feed, except for the feed system. Now you can see that we have all of our connections coming from our controller here, which most of them are right at the top here. So with that, that concludes this video for the PRX. Now remember, there could be a couple minor changes. We are at the early stages of the release with the PRX here. For all your final details, please refer back to the manual. And if you have any questions, feel free to contact us.